Okay, guys, welcome to the podcast. I am ready to roll. I can't tell you what I've been doing. I've been trying out a new piece of software to get the podcast to be even better. I'm constantly trying to improve the podcast, and sometimes I pull my hair out and just trying to make things too perfect, and it's part of my personality. And I talked before about my frustrations in dog training and everything like that. And I guess you guys get to know me better, and you'll see that through the person who I am, it often it can be frustrating, and it's something that I talk about a lot. I'm a super perfectionist. I'm super critical of myself, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit more fun, though. So I've been involved in dog sports for over 10 years. And I want to kind of share a little bit of that with you. I talked about dog sports before, but today I thought it would be a good idea. I was talking to Janet just before I started the podcast, and I said, what the heck am I going to talk about today? Because I've talked about so many different things on the podcast. This is, I think, the 52nd or so, 50 plus podcasts I've brought to you. And interestingly enough, I've only had a couple of guests on. I'd like to have more guests on. It's very hard to get guests with this whole COVID shutdown thing we've had. It's been really hard to get people over to the house to do things with social. I don't want people in masks on screen. I think it'd be ridiculous. So I haven't had a podcast with a guest in a while. I will bring you more of those. I think those are super fun. I love talking to people about dogs. I love talking about dog training. The last podcast I did, I talked about my frustrations, my challenges, and such, more of my personal side. And I do share all that with you guys. I want you guys to know who I am and know that I'm just a normal person. I'm nothing special. And I often struggle with things like you guys struggle. I talked about my depression. I'm super critical of myself. My childhood was not the ideal childhood, but I think it was the ideal childhood for me because it made me the person that I've become. And I think it's important that you guys really embrace what you have with your dog. I always say, you got the dog you got, try not to change it. People are constantly sending me emails and asking me, how do I get my dog to do this? He won't do this. And the bottom line is that unless it's something like that the dog should be doing, sitting down and coming, staying, doing all the stuff like that, I really don't like the idea of making dogs do things that they're not comfortable with. So Goofy, when I first got him, my real goal was to compete in IPO and in a protection dog sport. And Goofy liked the sport. He didn't love the sport. And part of that was because some of the people that I trained with early on didn't really do a lot of good foundational conditioning with him from that aspect, something I didn't really have much control over, in particular at that time. So he never really became that dog to do protection dog sports in a real competitive way. He was fine to do it at a club level, but as he became, a little bit stressed out by it and didn't really want to do it, I had to make a decision. Either I could get another dog and keep doing the sport, or I could do what my dog enjoyed doing. And to me, it was more important to do what my dog enjoyed doing, and I really want to stress that for you guys. So I don't know how many of you guys who listen to my podcast or to watch the podcast are really set on doing particular sports with your dogs. I mean, I don't know, some of you guys probably are. Some of you I know have told me that you're into competitive obedience and protection dog sports. Some of you just have pets. Some of you train your dogs just to do things that are cool and have a great relationship with. That's really the most important thing, right? Getting your dog to have a solid relationship and giving your dog the best life possible is really what my goal is in doing this podcast, in the work I've done with Bound Angels, in the work I do training clients. And I really want you to know that this is really an important piece. My goal is to make sure that dogs have a better life than they would have if I wasn't doing my job. That's really kind of like my mission. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, I was talking to them about a product that I'm considering endorsing. And they said, are you interested in making money or are you interested in helping dogs? And those two come hand in hand. Obviously, my number one focus is in helping dogs, because those of you who know my work through Bound Angels, I spent the last 12 plus years helping dogs. So on the other side of course, we need to make money. It's a capitalistic society. We want to earn money. I want to make money so that I can continue to bring you a great product, which is the videos that I provide for free on YouTube. And in turn for that, I sell advertising space. Some of you guys say, oh, there's so much advertising in some of the longer videos. Well, every 3 minutes they put an ad in and I get like 2 cents. I mean, I don't even know what I get for the video or the ad. So you really have to look at what your core mission is. And your core mission really should be to give your dog the best life possible. Because if you do that, there's an old saying that Zig Ziglar said, if you give people enough of what they want, then they're going to give you enough of what you want. And that might be a complete misquote of it. I wrote a book once and I sent it to Zig Ziglar, who's a great motivational speaker, and he said, "You misquoted me." And I thought, okay, well, I misquoted you, but I got you to write a letter back, and I thought that was really, really fantastic. But you really want to look at life, the more you give, the more you get. And it's something that I've really learned, is that by giving more, you get more. And my real goal when I first got into training dogs and helping dogs and rescuing dogs, I was making a really decent living. I was doing really well. I didn't need to change careers. I didn't need to make any more money. But I wanted to help dogs. Now, through that change and through that mission, I actually started really making more money in the dog training, and in doing what I do, it ended up helping me change careers into something that, I want to do the rest of my life. I want to be involved in dog sports and dog competition and dog videos and instruction stuff, because it really is just something that clicks with me. Now, that being said, I always tell Janet, I'm fine to just train my dogs and make videos for you guys and help you guys. I don't really need to compete. I don't really need to do anything too fancy. I've done it. I enjoyed it, but I don't love it. I don't love competing. I love doing demos. I love teaching, and I love that. But for me to go to a competition, it's okay. It's not my favorite thing. I love being on stage. I'm good at teaching. I'm good at instructing. I'm not good with small groups. So for me to be in a competition like an AKC trial or something like that, it's okay. It's not that great. But let's talk about, though, for a second, the different things you can do with your dog. So when you get a pet dog, you might think to yourself, one of two things. Either you're just going to say, okay, this is my pet dog. He's going to live at home. We're going to have fun. We're going to go for walks. And that in and of itself is an activity for the dog. But the dog should have something proactive and productive to do. The reason that's so important is because a dog is a working animal. They enjoy it. They love serving our needs. They love providing for our needs. And whether those needs are, being a service dog, or being an obedience dog, a protection dog, or anything like that. These are all things that give the dog some meaning in their life. Now, all our dogs have some meaning. And our dogs, I'm talking about Janet and my dogs. So Goofy did protection. He did, obedience. He did confirmation. He did so many different things and tons of demos. And think about it, he works every day in the videos that I put on my member section and my YouTube channel. So you see Goofy every day. He's learned countless things over his 10 years in life, and he just loves it. When Janet's outside working Dwayne or Jimmy, Goofy is just crying in the house trying to get out and do something. So anytime I can take him outside and do something with him, he's ecstatic. And I almost sometimes feel guilty because sometimes I don't do enough with him. Sometimes I don't give him the stimulus he really needs, which is to be out there, to be doing something, to be working, training, doing, being nutty, just having fun, playing. And life sometimes gets in the way, right? So I want to really be conscious of that. Even as the dog gets older, they can do things. And, Jimmy did agility, and he did obedience, and Bosman did agility, and Bosman did obedience, and Maya did some protection work and obedience. And Dwayne is doing everything from agility to obedience to hunting, and that's like my new thing that I've been doing with Dwayne. And thanks to Janet, she kind of got me into that. And it's kind of fun. I can't shoot an animal. I got to tell you that right now. Like, that's not my thing. Yesterday I was at the hunting club, and one of the guys there said, "Oh, I'm going to take you hunting. You're going to love it." He obviously doesn't know me, because I would never shoot an animal. For me to do that. And again, I'm not against hunting. Let me be really crystal clear about something. Anybody who, because I eat meat, anybody who goes out and kills their own meat, their own animal to eat it, is a hero in my eyes. Because to be hypocritical like me and just go to a store and buy it is hypocritical, because I'm not really a part of that process, which is really, really important. So those of you who are vegetarians and vegans, great. I applaud it. I think it's fantastic. I can't do it for my health. I've done it. I did it for 15 years or something like that. But the people who kind of like always, they say if slaughterhouses were made of glass, nobody would eat meat, and that's probably true. I know how bad it is, but what I do when I buy meat, and again, I'm getting on a total tangent here, which I always do when I talk, but I try to buy meat that's ethically raised, humanely slaughtered, and I know that seems like an oxymoron, and from grass-fed beef and all that stuff. But anyway, the point is that hunting is another sport that dogs can do. But let's go through some of the sports, some of the activities you can do with your dog that are super, super fun. And I'm going to just hit a few of them. I'm going to miss some. So if you send me a message, say you missed this one, thanks. I know I'm going to miss a few. But first of all, and they're in no specific order, here's some sports that you can do with your dog, depending on your dog. And I guarantee you, no matter what kind of dog you have, there's something in here that your dog can do. Guarantee it. A lot of the stuff goes through. AKC has a great program for almost all of these. Some will go under different things, but tracking, for example, right? It uses a dog's nose to find things, to scent, and the tracking in AKC, I think, is a little bit different than the tracking in, for example, IPO. But tracking in general gives the dog the opportunity to use their nose to detect scents in the air or on the ground and find things, find people, or find object. I think it's a fantastic sport. It's one of the sports, one of the levels or exercises that's in IPO. The only thing I didn't like about it, and the reason I pulled Goofy out of it, was because you're kind of, if you're in California and areas where it's less land, where there's less open land, especially in the Los Angeles area, your dog is kind of tracking on usually a farmer's field, and you don't know what they're spraying. You don't know what kind of pesticides are going in the ground. And when the dog is sniffing it in, they're inhaling it, and their senses are so delicate that I thought it could do damage to the dog's nose, so I kind of pulled him out of it. But a fantastic sport. If you live in the Midwest, if you live in the middle of the country, you live up north, anywhere where there's just great open land, I think tracking is one of the most fun things your dog can do. One of the most fun things you can do with them, because it is a completely natural skill for a dog to use their nose. And it's something they can do at almost any age, right? It's not like it requires an immense amount of physical stamina. Another great sport, agility. Janet's been doing agility with her dogs for 10 plus years. She's a fantastic competitor, a fantastic teacher, and it just builds this amazing bond with her dogs, with Bosman, with Jimmy, with Dwayne. Seeing her connect with them is amazing, and she's pulled me into it. And I ran some agility courses, and I actually got some ribbons. I placed several times thanks to her amazing teaching and Jimmy's amazing skill. It is such a fun thing to do with your dog. And they have little things like the Zoom room where you can go and put your dog into these, the little room somewhere and do it, all the way up to competitive. You can go up to, world championship level, where Janet's teacher, Melissa, is a world champion competitor. So much fun. Now, again, I'll tell you the downside of it. It does put a beating on the dog. The way Janet did it, she was very compassionate to her dogs. Not quite so for a lot of other people who really push their dogs a little too hard. And when you do that, it ends up it beats the dogs down. They can have a lot of hip injuries. They can have a lot of shoulder injuries. They can have back injuries. They can tear their ACLs and a host of things. But done with compassion and understanding, it's not something they're going to be able to do for their whole lives. But during their youthful, vigorous years, agility is a fantastic sport activity for your dog. You got to get into a club to do it because you need a lot of equipment, a lot of stuff, but super fun thing for your dog to do. There's also what's called nose work. Now, tracking and nose work or scent work, whatever the difference is, there is some differences, but the idea is the dog is using the nose. So tracking, they're going to track the ground and they're going to go find something. In nose work and scent work, the idea is that the dog detects an odor, and a lot of the stuff with nose work, the competitions are in a realistic setting. So they'll be in a building or in a parking lot or in a park or something like that, and the dog has to find a scent. And they use essential oils, where in actuality, if the dog was finding a scent, the dog would be finding for example, dope or explosives or something of that, cell phones, something of that nature. They would be detecting an odor and indicating on it. Now, I know I think they use like cedar, birch, and something else, essential oils. And so they wet the cotton swab with that scent, and they put it in a little container, and then they hide the container. I can't tell you how much fun those kind of games are with dogs. It's something you can do. You can buy nosework kits, take nosework classes. Maybe I'll put some nosework stuff on my membership section on my YouTube channel. I've already put some scent work up where the dog detects my scent on a wooden dowel. Super fun. Not hard to teach, but it takes a lot of work to clear up that communication between you and the dog so that the dog kind of is clear on what you want and you're clear on how the dog is indicating it. That's all kind of stuff where the dogs use their nose. Obedience and rally, they're very different, obedience and rally, but they're basically in the obedience field where the dog is going to do what you ask him to do. Now, rally, you can talk to the dog, there's signs up, and you do a series of 10, 15, 20 different exercises inside a ring, turning the dog, sitting the dog, walking the dog by things, jumping over things, and turning around, and all those things. Obedience is a prescribed set of exercises that you have to know and that are then called out by a judge. Super fun, but can be kind of boring because it becomes very repetitive and it's in a small ring. That's the one thing. Goofy got his utility title in AKC. It's okay. It's a 40 by 50 ring for a dog like Goofy. It's a small area, but I mean, I see some people, my friend David, friend Louise and Patty, all these people who are just fantastic at it. It's great to watch the amount of control you can put on a dog in that small ring. I always like bigger field obedience, like the Crufts obedience is in a much bigger area. But also the obedience in things like IPO and Mondio Ring are super fun, and it shows you what a great relationship you can have with your dog. I also, like I said, hunting, they do field trials or they do hunt tests where the dog has to mark on a fallen bird, or sometimes they use dummies or like dokens and bumpers. The dog has to go out, find that after it was dropped or shot. And bring it back to you, deliver it to hand, and then do it over 2 or 3 different objects and different falls, some are over water. I mean, it's really what a Labrador was bred to do. They were just bred to do that. They love it. They love nothing more. It's one of the most fun things for dogs to do. And people who really hunt, if you're a bird hunter, what a great thing to do with your dog, because you're out there, you're out in nature, your dog is having a great time, you're spending time with your dog, and you're providing for your essential needs of eating. There's protection dog sports, which I talked about a little bit before. It's not for every dog. It really takes a specific breeding, a specific temperament, and a specific relationship, and really, most importantly, a really specific partner for you to work with. So the decoy or the helper, whoever is working with you, with your dog, must be someone you trust. My friend Danny Craig, amazing guy. Oscar Mora, amazing guy. These are really great people working dogs. You don't want to just go to any club and have anybody in front of your dog. Jimmy Van, of a great Mondio ring sport helper in general. My friend Robert has a great club. These are guys that I work with that I love. My friend Eric does it. There's great helpers, but I'll tell you, more than likely, you're going to find the great helpers after you've gotten one dog kind of screwed up. So that's kind of a tough one. You got to kind of think about that. But it's something that dogs love. And there's different, well, there's PSA, KNPV, there's Mondio Ring, French Ring, there's IPO, which is now IGP, or which was Schutzenden originally. And they are super fun things for your dogs to do. There is risk of injury in it. The IPO has 3 phases. Mondio, or I think French Ring has 2 as well. I know Mondio has 2 phases, which is obedience and protection. The obedience is really tough in Mondio because there's a lot that goes through it. Broad jumps, high jumps, palisades. There's retrieve, there's scent detection. There's a lot of things in the Mondio, obedience routine. That's really amazing. And then you have the protection aspect of it, which is super, super in depth and super fun. You gotta watch a Mondio trial to really understand it, but it's super fun. And like I say, Schutzen is kind of the old style, or IP or IGP, whatever they call it now, is really the I think the original protection sport, and it's done on a sleeve as opposed to on a suit. The ring sports are done on suits, and it's for the right dog, for a Malinois, a German Shepherd, a Rottie, Doberman. They're really bred for that sport. They love it. They just love it. But again, you got to watch the long bites. You got to watch the tracking. You got to watch the high jumps. They're all things that can injure the dog. And you got to watch that you've got a good dog, a solid conformation, structured dog that can really, really do those things. So there's another thing called freestyle, which is kind of like dancing with your dog. It's kind of cute. Janet does it to mess around with Dwayne and then have fun with him. And I watch her doing it. It's super cute. But it's just another activity of something you can do with your dog, something that you and your dog can bond through and do together, and it gives you a really great relationship. It gives you something to do. In other words, a dog isn't like a book that you just pick it up and read it and then put it away. A dog's a living, breathing, feeling, emotional creature that should have something to do. Think about if you had a child and the child never did anything until you wanted to do something. It'd be a horrible, horrible life for it. If that's what you want, then get a goldfish, because a dog requires some kind of a stimulus, something to do, or else they can be destructive, or else they could just have a really cruddy life. And that's not what you want to do. You want your dog to have a good life. You want your dog to have a solid goal in life, and accomplishing things is a great goal. Great things for us. It makes you a better person. It gives you more brain function and things to do. So think about that, right? It's something, and even if it's something as silly as freestyle or dancing. What else? Dock diving. Dock diving is another great activity for dogs. It obviously requires a pool and a launch pad so you can do it, but it's a fun thing. The risk of injury there is just the dog's going to pull something. I mean, if they land in the water, as long as they can swim, they don't drown. It's a super fun game. The dogs are judged on how far they jump, and there's competitions where you'll see some Malinois or these other dogs just jumping like 20, 25 plus feet. It's amazing how these dogs love it, but it's a very short thing. It's, in other words, not like where they're going at it for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes like some of the protection dog things. This is where a dog is really kind of going up to the ramp, boom, jumping, swimming back out, and then they're done. Then they go to the next thing. So it's kind of like diving, I think, for human beings. It's kind of, you climb to the top of the diving board, you jump, and then that's it. Just hope you don't hit your head. There's flyball. Flyball's super fun. The dogs run back and forth and hit the board. The balls pop out, go back and forth, and it's judged on speed, which is also real similar to lure coursing. Lure coursing is where a dog goes on. It's a course, and the dog follows this like plastic bag or this thing around, and it's on a course, and the dog has to chase after it. So if a dog has crazy prey drive, this is a good way to put that prey drive to use. It's obviously a good idea to teach your dog to control prey drives. And some dogs, their prey drive is so insane that they'll go so hard until their heart shoots out of their throat. But it's a really good thing to burn energy and stuff like that. You'll want to make sure your dog's in good shape. You'll want to make sure your dog has good conformation in order to do a sport like that, because if they don't, they can get hurt. But what a great activity for a healthy dog. Like, terriers love stuff like that. Herding dogs love stuff like that. By the way, herding is another great sport for dogs that they can do. They herd sheep. There's people who have classes on it for dogs like Border Collies, Malinois, Aussies, any kind of a herding breed. They love to do that. And it's their natural breeding. That's what they were bred to do. Remember that these dogs, before they were just pets and sitting around our apartments and our houses, they were doing a job. They were doing a function. So other than non-sporting dogs, all dogs had a function. Working dogs, herding dogs, they had a job to do. And herding is a super, super great thing for dogs. There's also something called barn hunt, which is super fun for dogs. And it is that they kind of go in a barn and they have to find the rat. and the rat is protected in case if any of you guys have some kind of a thing where you don't want rats. Or none of these sports really ever hurt any dogs, right, or any animals. They certainly shouldn't hurt the dogs, but they're not really designed where the dog is actually hurting a sheep or hurting a rat or anything like that. And then there's another thing called earth dog, which you can do with small dogs. And there's probably, like I said, I probably missed so many things, but think about getting involved in some activity with your dog. Think about how much more fun it could be for you to get out and meet different people and see the natural drives of your dog that can get them really stimulated and connected. And you'll really form a relationship with your dog on a completely different level. And I think you'd really enjoy it. I think if you really love your dog, seek something out. Don't make it your goal to be a master at it. Make it your goal to enjoy it, to make it an activity you can do with your dog. Just like if you have a friend and you play golf with them, or you go bowling with them, or you have your fiance, your wife, your husband, that you have an activity that maybe you go on vacation, you go snorkeling or swimming together or sightseeing together or go to nice restaurants together or anything like that. It's also a nice activity to have with your dog, something you guys can do together and that will bond you and make your relationship that much better. So what I want to do is I want to answer some questions. And I'm going to read them off my computer. I usually have them printed out, and that's usually a pain in the neck because I have to have them printed out. But I'm going to try here to do this. And again, I'm using a new software to record this. I'm hoping it's a good quality. Some of them have been good quality. Some of them have been bad quality. But let's see here. Let's get to some questions. CZ asked me, great work. Can you give some tips to enhance the protection instinct of Rottweilers or any powerful breed? Because I see a lot of working dogs like Rottweilers becoming lap dogs. Been taken away from their actual nature by ignorant owners. So that's a great point. But you don't necessarily need to increase the protection instinct of a dog because it's either there or it's not. You might want to harness it and channel it better. But it goes into what I said in the beginning of this podcast, that I don't believe in changing that, right? I don't believe in trying to increase something that's not really there. If the dog doesn't really want to do it, the dog's not going to do it. And you have to be really careful to understand that you might be putting your dog at risk and you might be putting somebody else at risk if that's not what the dog wants to do. If you get a well-bred Rottweiler that was bred through protection lines, that's one thing. But they've changed so much of the breeding that there's a lot of Rottweilers that I've seen in AKC that are nothing like Rottweilers that were meant for protection. And because of that selective breeding, they've created a different dog. Do I agree with it? Doesn't matter, right? Probably not. I do think working dogs should be working dogs, but a lot of these working dogs have really become nice pets where they would have never landed in a home if they didn't have this change in breeding. Okay, next question. Robert, need your help with our 1-year-old lab. Every part of his training has gone great. No, really it has. Good. But I cannot get recall off lead. On a long line, 50 feet is perfect every single time, but as soon as he's unclipped, he knows he's unclipped. His recall barely to 50-50. I'm looking at e-collars. Okay, so e-collars are not a bad idea for this went out to Bruce, by the way. E-collars are a good idea used properly. The problem you're going to have with the e-collar, and I'm going to tell you this, and then you can make your own decision. I had a client once who had a dog, didn't have a solid recall, and the trainer put the dog on a e-collar to do the recall, and when the dog didn't come, they shocked the dog. The problem was when the dog got shocked, the dog realized that it was coming from the person and really wouldn't come back to the person then. So you got to kind of figure out how to do that training. I'll do some videos on that at some point. I've got one coming up, but we're not using an e-collar, but it's teaching the dog how to come. You need to channel the dog's natural prey drives. And if you can do it on a lead 100% of the time, then one trick you can do is you can lighten the line. You can go from a heavy banded line to like a thin parachute cord line, and that will give you more control over the dog. The other thing you can do too is pretend you're unsnapping it, make the clicking sound, because dogs will fall for that a lot, and still have a line on the dog. The other thing to do is to cut the line shorter and shorter. So if you have a 50-foot line, cut it down to 45, then 40, then 35, then 30, all the way down till you have like a little pull tab on the dog. And the dog, if it's done in small increments, doesn't really think that the line isn't there. They still think you have the ability to do that. So that might help you with that. Let's get another question. I've got hundreds of questions here. I'm literally just randomly scrolling through and answering them. Okay, Joe Blow. I would go on that one. I have a Belgian Malinois, 11 months old, who seems to have fear, bite reactions, skittishness, and reacts to sound sensitivity, wondering if these behaviors can be trained out of a dog or is it a lost cause. The dog works fine with me, but has gone at my grandchildren, a trainer, and a store clerk at Petco, and definitely reacts on a dime, unpredictable. So he's 11 months old. You still got some chance there, Joe Blow. You can work the dog. You can kind of get the dog. You've got to build the dog's confidence, right? And the dog will never be a solid, rock solid, strong protection dog or have that drive, and that's okay. You should be content with that. You should be happy with that. But you can definitely build the dog's confidence. Once the dog is like 2 or 3 years old, it's going to be much, much, much harder to do. So not a lost cause, but something you should think about. Tony says, let me see how I'm doing on time here. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit longer today. We have a 10-month-old, Tony says, 10-month-old golden retriever, and for some reason, everything scared him, and he is not doing what I tell him. My question is this: what's the best time to train him, before or after feeding? That is an excellent question, and the best time to always train a dog is before feeding. Because once the dog has food, remember, dogs are working animals. Once they have their food, they're less likely to do it because they've gotten a reward. So I always train my dogs before feeding, and I give them treat rewards or pieces of kibble rewards during that training. And then when the training is over, I put all their food down, and it really makes them enjoy the reward that much more because they worked for it. So that's an excellent question. Daniel Holbert says, first of all, thank you for the videos. I have a 6-month-old German Shepherd, and he would not be half the dog he is without your video. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. My question is, my wife and I are pregnant with our first child. What is your advice on introducing the dog to the baby when he arrives? Are there things we should do before we bring him home? We have socialized him with children tons of times since he was 8 weeks old. So that's an excellent thing that you did socialize the dog. But when you have a baby is very different. Babies and toddlers are different than children to a dog because they smell different, they look different, they sound different. Everything about them is different. And what you don't want the dog to do is you don't want the dog to try to play with a child. Because if he plays with a child in a way that he would play with another dog, he would obviously grab the child by its skin and try dragging it around, which Goofy did with Dwayne-A-Mater, and they had a great time. But Dwayne-A-Mater's skin is much stronger than a baby's skin. So my goal really when I have a dog is the dog is not permitted to touch the child, the baby. That's it. He's not allowed to go near the child. I hold the baby. I caress the baby. I stroke the baby. I kiss the baby. I show the dog, this is mine. This belongs to me. And when I'm with this baby, you sit, you down, whatever. When I put the baby down, I give you tons of attention, but the baby comes first. Everything comes first with the baby so that you move the baby into the elevated position. And the dog must know, since you've done such a great job with the dog, you just got to structure it and make sure that the dog knows that the baby belongs to you and that the baby is very, very important to you. Okay, this one is an old question I didn't get. So Fuentes says, I am in a wheelchair. I want a dog to help me daily. So the question, it's a lot of questions. I'm going to just nail through them really quick. One, can I be around when the trainer is training my dog? That you'll have to ask the trainer. Most trainers should want you around for training the dog. Can a trainer train my dog when someone come a gun to hurt me, to attack? No. You're going to have a protection dog or a service dog, and even if you have if somebody has a gun, a protection dog is not going to help because they're going to get shot. I hope this is a serious question. Can the dog be trained in a noisy place so they don't run when a gunshot? I don't know what obsession you have with gunshots. I mean, maybe I think you should get a gun. Right? Like, I don't know. What are you talking about here? Can the dog be trained if someone tried to hit me if the dorm jumping and get hit? I think that's a really kind of strange question. I don't like people using dogs as service dogs because a lot of times we get into these it's got to be a protection dog, it's got to be a service dog, it's got to be an alert dog, and it's too much. So I don't think this is really a place you want to go with this. So okay, so K Doodle says, I've been hearing a lot of stories recently about dogs getting DCM from grain-free foods. Do you know anything about this topic? I'm going to tell you what I do know. I am not a veterinarian, but DCM is something that occurs in dogs only. First of all, the whole grain-free thing is a hype. Right, I'm going to do a podcast on really proper feeding dogs. My dogs are on a raw diet. I've done every kind of kibble and food in the world. Not everyone, but most of the good ones. And I can tell you that a natural, home-cooked, raw diet is going to be much better as long as you supplement it properly for your dog. The DCM occurred in dogs that had an adverse reaction to things such as chickpeas, pea protein, and such. So what the manufacturers were doing by taking the grain out, because some dogs had grain allergies, not all, very, very small percentage of dogs had grain allergies. So they would strip the grains out and replace it with peas and chickpeas. And those were increasing a toxicity in a dog that had a predisposition to not being able to deal with that protein. And then it went into DCM. And those dogs would die from that. So, don't jump on all these bandwagons, grain-free this, that. Try to get a solid food. Try to get a food that's good for your dog. If you can home cook, if you can do raw, it's a really good option. You got to supplement it. You got to keep an eye on your dog, do blood tests on your dog, and see where the dog is. So that has to do, like I said, it doesn't have to do with the absence of grain. It has to do with what they're substituting with. And remember that dog food is a high profit business. And the way that they make their money is if the first ingredient is beef and they're selling you a 50-pound bag of food for $100, I don't know where you can buy beef for $2 a pound. So there's a lot of rendering that goes into it, a lot of filler, a lot of meals, and those are the scraps of the animal, which can still be a good thing. Like chicken backs is considered a scrap, but it's a really good source of food as long as you're not getting roadkill or ground up shelter dogs that were euthanized. David Smith says, my question though is, I have read if you use stay or sit for when you leave a dog in a fenced yard or house for several hours, he does not move. How do you handle the situation where the dog is supposed to be on his own? Okay, so that's after you leave. So first of all, no dog should be told to stay when you leave. That's kind of idiotic, right? What you want to tell the dog to do is, hey, relax, I'm leaving. Because if you tell the dog stay, and again, you shouldn't even be letting your dog in a yard that's not fenced in. So there's no reason to ever use a stay when you leave your dog. That's just get rid of that. I'm going to do one more question. I'm going to wrap it up because we're in about 40 minutes. It might be kind of boring for you guys. Jordan says, how do I get more engagement for my dog? My German Shepherd seems to give me the middle finger. He doesn't have a middle finger, by the way. No matter how hard I try to get attention, her nose is always on the ground ignoring me. And that is, Jordan, because you might not be that interesting. So first of all, get the dog good and hungry, skip a meal or skip 2 meals on the dog, and then start hand feeding the dog. Every time the dog looks at you, mark that, yes, give the dog food. Get the dog to eat from your hand. You'll build the best relationship with your dog. Don't have toys around for your dog when you're not around. That the only toy that's going to be around for your dog is going to be one that you entertain him with. Other than that, the dog should only be focused on you. Now, by the way, several people have said to me over the past, when you watch the video portion of this podcast, you see there's a zebra right here behind me. And people say, well, Robert has a dead zebra on the picture on the wall behind. But because I've never shown the entire picture, which I'm going to show you now for the very, very first time, and that is a picture that I took in Africa, in Kenya, when I went there several years ago, because I don't know, those of you know, I am a photographer, and you can see my photography on robertocabral.com, just a little something for you. But that is a picture that I did. It's a limited edition print of a lion who had killed a zebra that I came upon and saw, and I thought this was one of the most powerful images ever, because in each day that we wake up, we are either the zebra or we're the lion, right? We need to eat, so we need to kill, or we need to work to get that. And on the other side, we need to keep from getting killed, and we need to keep moving. And that's a really, really, really important aspect in life. It's a metaphor. That picture to me is a metaphor for life. The lion looks somber because he had to kill the animal, but he needed to eat. The zebra was not the fastest zebra and didn't get away. So that's the story behind that. I may never, ever show that again, but for those of you who watched today's podcast, those of you who listen to it know the story, but you don't know the picture. So you got to get on YouTube and watch the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Again, as always, thank you for being a part of my online dog training family. I appreciate you. I'm grateful to be a part of your training with your dog. I'm humbled that you chose me. There's a lot of trainers out there. I want you to know that I do my best every day to give you the best information, the most honest, concise, useful information to making your life with your dog the best life possible. And I strive to do that constantly, and I will always give you 100%. Thanks for being here. Be sure to check out my members only section at robertcabral.com. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share this podcast with all your dog loving friends. And I'll see you soon.